Minister has a brief statement, and then he's happy to take your questions.
Hi, everybody. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of Treaty 6. I'd also like to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection with this land. I'm pleased to release the third quarter report for Budget 2018. The deficit is down by $1.9 billion, faster than forecast. We are on track to balance the budget by 2023 and will continue to have the best balance sheet in the country. The economy is growing. 44,000 jobs created last year, mostly in the private sector. And very importantly, our kids are learning in good schools and patients have good care. I think we're all pleased to hear yesterday that Alberta's child poverty rate has been cut in half since 2015 and is the lowest in the country. As a former social worker, a former city councillor, and a public servant, I know firsthand how important that is to the well-being of families and the entire province. It's why I got into politics, to help make a difference in people's lives. And it's why our government has taken a prudent, careful approach to balancing the budget while protecting jobs, supporting services, and helping people, so that our kids can grow up in a better province and the most vulnerable among us have someone in their corner. Do we have more work to do? No doubt. Although our economy is growing, the recovery has not reached every kitchen table. And pipeline bottlenecks remain a serious issue. In today's report, you can see the impact those bottlenecks had on the growth in the first half of last year and will continue to have in the first half of this year. That's why we took action to curtail production and move oil by rail, short and medium-term solutions to a problem that can only be solved by building pipelines. And it's why the Premier has fought so hard for pipelines and why she is on her way to Ottawa today to testify on Bill C-69. And let me just say right now, Ottawa is in a tizzy about the SNC-Lavalin affair. It would be nice if they spent some of that energy on a much bigger job issue right here in this province. I'm sure the Premier will be making that case very forcefully tomorrow. At the same time, we are fighting for pipelines. We also have to maintain a steady fiscal hand to keep our budget on track with prudent forecasts that protect our budget against the unforeseen. We're prudent on our differential forecasts. We're prudent on our assumptions on full market access. And we've been prudent on our revenue projections. We beat our deficit forecast this year while defending public services. And we'll do the same again next year. Because at the end of the day, what we all want are good jobs and a more diversified economy, good schools and hospitals, and to maintain the best balance sheet in the country. That's what our plan is achieving. And that's the path we are on. Thank you for being here today, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Maybe, Kim, I gave you short shrift yesterday in terms of an answer to a question. Do you have a question?
Oh, wow. Okay. Lots of them. It seems like you were able to reduce the deficit projection in large part because of the contingency fund. How critical was it? And is that an accurate projection, an accurate number that we're looking at, given that you needed the contingency fund to apply to the numbers this time around for third fiscal?
No, it wasn't the contingency fund. It was the fact that energy prices in the first part of the year were robust. But overall, we have come in, I think, $1 above budget on our oil projections. We've also been able to keep our spending down below population plus inflation. So those two things have been really beneficial. There's more PIT, or personal income tax revenues, than we anticipated as a result of a reassessment of 2017. So those things have really helped.
But the contingency fund also did help though. I mean, it was used, right?
Yeah, but no differently than we've always used a contingency fund. I didn't rely on that any differently than previous years. But those other things around the robust oil in the first part of the year, more personal income tax really helped out in maintaining expenditures.
When's the budget?
You'll have to ask the Premier about all of that. I am preparing the budget, of course. There will be a budget 2019, I can assure you.
Before the election?
You'll have to ask the Premier what her timing is with the RIT drop. It'll either be before the RIT drop or after the RIT drop.
So why is there path to balance in the Q3 update? We don't usually see that in the quarterly updates.
It was in budget 2018, and it was about a year ago. It was about a year ago that we did that. And, I just thought it was important. I asked my officials to prepare the information because there's good news in this path to balance. And I thought it's been enough time since we last talked about it that we should talk about it again.
Because there won't be a budget before the election.
It's up to the Premier when the RIT is dropped, but there will be a budget 19.
Were you worried, Minister, because it's an economic document, but it's also, I think, somewhat political. And you've got a lot of the slogans that you use on the trail in this thing, make a bad situation worse, kitchen table, unlike others, we're not going to make drastic cuts.
Are you enjoying the reading, or?
It's just that, as you say, but now of all times, you've decided to put this in, as we're in the election cycle. So you're already facing criticism that you're using government resources to sort of toot your own horn here. So is this a bit more political than it should be?
No, this was prepared by our officials in TBF. All the assumptions, all the numbers are what they have done. Certainly, an update like this is an important thing to remind Albertans that we're on a path to balance, and we are doing a great job in getting there without blowing up programs and services and hospitals and those things that previous governments did to get to balance. We won't do that. We will take a prudent approach to getting there, and that's what this shows.
But did you direct the officials to include a path to balance update?
I did.
And so just tell us why again.
Because it had been a significant period of time since the last path to balance information that was in budget 2018. I thought it was important to remind Albertans that we are on a path to balance, and there has been a number of a great deal of volatility in this province. So I wanted to remind Albertans that we're on that path without harming programs and services that they rely on.
Do you think people should read into this though and think that you're not bringing forward a budget? Because that's what it looks like. I'm preparing a budget. It's the Premier's decision when the RIT is dropped, but there will be a budget 2019, of course.
Let's go to the phones. Operator, can you put through the first caller, please?
Our first question comes from Rick Bell. The Calgary Sun line is open.
Good morning. In the election, one of the key issues will be on spending. And going forward, yes, your spending is projected to be lower than inflation plus population growth, but there's still increases in spending every year. The official opposition's position is probably that they would like to see your 3.8, for instance, turn into 0. What do you tell Albertans who find that idea appealing, that there be a spending freeze for the next 1, 2, 3, or 4 years?
Maybe I'll use,
not increases as you have planned.
Thanks.
What do you tell those people that find it appealing?
Great. Maybe I'll just quote what a MLA from the UCP side says, that their plan will hurt Albertans. I fully agree with him. If you go to 0, or as Mr. Kenny has talked about, a 20% cut to get down to BC levels, then you will absolutely not only hurt Albertans, you will start to eat into the infrastructure that has been built into this province, built up in this province, and all Albertans rely on. We've worked to keep operating expense growth down to population plus inflation, and we've not done that at the expense of Albertans. When wildfires threatened communities and businesses, we put every resource that was needed to fight those fires. When farmers in Alberta
had a difficult year, we provided support to them through agricultural disaster assistance. We have targeted investments to the most vulnerable in this province. We have indexed AISH, income support programs, and seniors benefits. And we've struck a historic deal with the Lubicon Cree. So if Mr. Kenney wants to get to zero, he's going to have to throw out the important advances that we've made in this province and will continue to make under an NDP government.
Follow-up, Rick?
So is what you're saying that spending, I mean, we are spending as a province more than other provinces, so how is it not possible without huge pain, as you're contending it isn't possible, to have a year or two or three of holding the line on spending? Why is that impossible, given the fact that the Alberta government, before the NDP were in and now, still spend a lot more than other provinces? Why is it so devastating to have it as a spending freeze?
Yeah, I'll just remind you what we've done to manage costs, Rick. We have managed public sector compensation. We have controlled health spending by keeping expenses below population plus inflation, and we're continuing to tightly manage discretionary spending across government and to eliminate waste that was put here by the PCs. Those are the things that we've done. I'll stand on that record any day of the week.
Thank you. Operator, can you put through the next caller, please?
Our next question comes from Chris Barco of the Calgary Herald. Your line is open.
Hi, Minister. I'm wondering if you're concerned at all about the slowing economic growth. This forecast talks about a 1.6% GDP growth, which is obviously less than last year. And when is it going to get better?
Well, as I said, Chris, you know, we, in the last half of 2018 and the first half of 2019, we see some headwinds affecting this province, but we also grew 44,000 jobs last year. So the economy did grow in 2018. Market access is having an impact on us. We took action to address that, both short-term and intermediate access. We see growth picking up in the last half of 2019 and 2020 being at 2.9%. So those are the kind of metrics that my officials in TBF tell me are going to happen, and I'll stand behind them.
Follow-up?
Yeah, the balance path document shows that you're relying on a 124% increase in royalty revenues in order to balance the budget by 2023-24. I guess I'm wondering, how does this get us off the energy roller coaster that you've often talked about?
Yeah, you know, what I can tell you around our forecasts around energy prices or oil prices are they absolutely are in the lower for longer frame. We're not, and they're conservative. We are prudent in identifying what those will be. So we're not blasting out with an unreasonably high number there. We have taken action to address diversification across the energy sector. Lots of good results in the PDP-1 project that's going on right now, and PDP-2. We're seeing about $12 billion, $10 to $12 billion, whether you look at PDP-1 or you add in PDP-2, you're talking about $12 billion of private sector investment that'll be taking place in this province. So the Made in Alberta work that we're doing is absolutely having the right impact and will get us off this energy roller coaster, as well as a fairer, more appropriate kind of tax model, progressive tax model, is helping us out as well. Those things are working in the right direction, and I'm pleased with the actions. You know, Mr. Kenney talked about those investments in PDP-1 being simply pigs at the trough, but we know better. These investments will put Albertans to work and get better value for our resources if we can diversify in the energy sector.
All right, we'll take one more from the phones and then come back to the room. Operator, the next caller, please.
Our next question comes from Jeffrey Morgan of the Financial Post. Your line is open.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my question. Coming back to the risk adjustment, $500 million removed,
Right.
and so as a result, the budget deficit is $1.9 billion lower than forecast.
Right.
That's that's almost a third of the lower number. So, was this decision to remove the risk adjustment, a result of heading towards an election, or what was the reason why you would take out the risk adjustment?
No, we've always taken it out at the third quarter update, I believe. I think we've lowered it, perhaps at second quarters in previous years, but we left it in there because of the volatility and the blowout of the differential. WTI fiscal year to date is $63.68. Our assumption is $62, so we don't require that risk adjustment with how many, 4 more weeks left in the fiscal year.
Follow-up?
So in years past, then, this risk adjustment is typically removed at the third quarter, is that?
I think we've lowered in second quarter. Perhaps, I don't remember the amounts we've lowered it, but yes, we have done a lowering second quarter if we're confident that we'll meet our WTI projections for the year. But this year, with the volatility, we left it in because, it was all over the place. And we took it out fully at this third quarter because it's not required, as I said, because of the fiscal year to date being $1.68 above what we projected.
Okay, let's come back to the room. Questions here?
The update shows the real GDP growth, obviously a little bit lower, but you do say you're confident that it will increase at the later part of 19 and into 20.
Right.
A new report today from the Conference
Right.
Board of Canada says it's even lower than projected in this fiscal update. So when should we be concerned about that growth, and what makes you so confident that we are going to get back on track?
I'm confident in my officials and their knowledge of the Alberta economy. They work in this milieu here. They are knowledgeable about the impacts of crude by rail. So I would put their numbers up against any numbers, whether they come from the Conference Board or anywhere else.
Is it concerning to you that even with the 1.6, we're still in the lower part of the country when it comes to...
Yeah, no, I get it. I want Alberta to be returning to its rightful place as a leader on economic growth year over year over year. But we've been through a significant recession in 2015 and 16. 2017, there was a rebound of 4.4%. 2018, we're going to close off at, I think the number's 2.5. 2.5. Thank you very much. But the uncertainty in the geopolitical area, the oversupply of oil, the differential has made this an incredibly volatile time in Alberta. We're weathering through these headwinds. We will get to a better place in the back half of 2019. And as I said, in 2020, we're projecting 2.9% growth. But we're not just waiting around either. We're taking action to diversify the economy. I talked about PDP 1 and 2, investments in artificial intelligence, which are having payoffs, as well as investments across the manufacturing sector, including the agribusinesses. Albertans are resilient. We are still growing. Our population is still growing. And we are, as a government, investing in the needed programs and services and infrastructure they need.
It's volatile, as you say, Ministers, but you need to double your non-renewable resource revenue to balance the books by 2023.
Well, that's what Varco is asking.
Yeah, so, but really, no one knows. As you say, it's a volatile industry. Things change.
Yeah, but the assumptions that we have put into the path to balance, if you're challenging those assumptions, then we need to go back and talk to our officials. But I'm confident in them because they are lower for longer numbers. They are not blowing out at, I think it's $72 where they end up in 23, 24. $72, not $100.
What about the fact that we got both parties that are essentially going to go to the doors in this campaign, promising to grow their way out of the deficit? Kenny wants to
Diversification, you mean?
well, you want to diversify, Kenny's going to cut the red tape. But you're both basically saying, we're going to grow this thing, we're going to grow a deficit.
I'm not saying the same thing Mr. Kenny is saying at all. I'm saying we're investing in this province. Pardon?
Different premise. You're both growing the economy through different ways. He wants to cut things to encourage entrepreneurs. You want to hand out tax credits and stuff and help diversify. But both of you are telling voters, we don't need to do, we can grow our way out of this deficit. Which is essentially like telling your spouse, don't worry, I'll get a raise next year, we'll be fine. I mean, what should Albertans think of that?
I don't think I've ever told my wife that.
But your both sides are predicating their promises on stuff that may not happen.
No, you know, that's what budgets are all about. You build in assumptions, you make assumptions, and these are prudent and they're conservative. So if you have some problem with those, then you need to look closely at those assumptions and test them against what other people believe will happen, other economists. So we're talking about diversification. Mr. Kenny is calling that pigs at the trough. We're talking about investments across the economy so that we slowly get back to balance instead of blowing up things in the meantime to get back to balance a year or two before. I think we're taking a reasonable approach to it, and I don't know what he's taking, actually.
What happens if you don't get additional capacity by 2023, 24?
Pipelines. Yeah, no, this is critical. We have also built reasonable assumptions about when they start in, when they're built and when they start, and they're the back half of 2022, I believe, where in the budget 2018, they were talked about in 2021. So we've adjusted, recognizing that there are challenges for those things to take place quickly, but it looks like TMX is moving towards a final decision from Cabinet in the not too distant future.
Let's go back to the phones. Operator, can you put through the next caller, please?
Our next question comes from Charles Lefebvre of Chat TV. Your line is open.
Minister, thank you for taking my question. One of the things you mentioned in the beginning was about can we talk more about the impact that the oil prices near the end of the year had on this most recent fiscal update?
Oh yeah, well, you just have to look at the I guess it's page 12, talking about the daily oil prices and the differential. And you can see where it blew out starting in towards the end of August. So that has had a significant impact, and it frankly was something we were hearing loud and clear from the energy sector. There were small, medium, and larger sized companies that were at risk of going under. So to protect jobs, to ensure we got the better value for our important oil commodity supply, we took action on curtailment, and that action had an immediate effect on reducing the differential. So I firmly believe we acted in a way that was to the benefit of Albertans and many, many, many companies and jobs in this province.
Follow-up?
My other follow-up is you've also mentioned a couple of times that you're working on a budget for 2019. Do you have a time when that will be presented to Albertans? You know, if it'll be before the election or after?
I know none of those things. I'm prepared, and the Premier, and I trust her implicitly that she knows the best timing for budget 2019. There will be a budget in 2019, and I will leave it to the Premier to tell me more specifically in the future.
I think we have one more question on the phones. Let's go to that.
Our question comes from James Keller of the Globe and Mail. Your line is open.
We can see that the curtailment policy has obviously slowed growth in oil production to below 4%. How much is that weighing down the overall GDP growth figure?
You know, it did shave some off 2019 GDP growth, but we get that back in 2020. So, you know, if you want more specific information, you can talk to my officials.
Follow-up?
In terms of sort of a net effect on the economy, what's your assessment of how curtailment is affecting the province's finances? Is it overall a benefit, or given some of these growth numbers, is it doing more harm than good?
No, it's absolutely doing more good than harm. We have saved jobs in this province, and we have got a better value for oil as a result of curtailment. We have a medium-term plan to move crude by rail, and that will also have a beneficial impact on this path to balance as well.
Okay, let's come back to the room for one final question, then we'll wrap up. If there are.
I got a broader question, because this may be the last time we talk to you before an election.
I hit the hustings.
You hit the hustings, so how's it been?
Hard.
What is it like when being finance minister? What was your best day, what was your worst day?
Yeah. Well, probably the best day was when the premier said she wanted me to be her finance minister. And the worst day, there's not been a worse day. I mean, we're fortunate in this province to live here and to do the work we all do. So I think every day is pretty great. I'm not even going to answer your question. Thanks. Thank you.